And welcome back to Out Chicago. Scott Duff here, along with Ellen Miller.
I'm right here.
Roll along. If you're tuning in on Facebook Live, know that we've got some interesting things going on here. Gotta love live radio. But you can always stream. Go over to WCPT820.com and you can stream us live without seeing weird menus on our faces.
And you know what? That's the beauty of radio. We are live.
It's fabulous.
We're just doing it right in front of you.
I know. And now, speaking of live, people are doing things.
Yes.
Call to action. Kina Collins is running for the 7th Congressional District, and she is right here in our studio.
Hey,
so,
y'all.
Kina, welcome. We're going to give you a little, ooh, that's a really loud applause.
Well, you know.
I know, exactly.
It's much earned.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much for having me.
well, of course. Well,
I'm
here-
super excited to be here. I watch y'all all the time.
Oh, well,
cool.
thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Ken Mejia Bill was here.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine.
Yeah,
Awesome.
good friend of
State
our
rep.
of the show as well. We're so happy that you're going to become a good friend of Out Chicago
Thank
right
you,
here.
thank you.
So, as all people who are running for office, I just want to start out with a very simple question: Why? Why are you running?
You know, I think that the job description of Congress has changed. As we have seen federal rollbacks happen, as we have seen this administration just a full-on attack of some of the most marginalized communities in this country. And for me, there has to be accountability for the Democratic Party to create a pathway to elevate new leadership, in my opinion. And so I've organized in my community. I've built coalition. I've passed civil rights legislation, and that was when I felt like I was battle tested and ready to throw my hat in the ring.
So, what exactly is your background?
Yeah, so I am an organizer. I am my original background in organizing is in gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform work. I am a native of the Austin community on the west side of Chicago, born and raised in the Austin community. I still live in the Austin neighborhood. And the last year of my life was spent doing healthcare advocacy work where I organized 20,000 physicians and medical students across the country to fight to secure a single payer Medicare for all system, which, you think that, healthcare as a human right is something that's common sense. But as we know in DC, common sense is not so common.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of these instances. And so, my background is in policy and community organizing, specifically around women and girls, communities of color, working class communities, LGBTQIA, et cetera.
So you're running against Danny Davis. He is a very popular congressman. He's been your congressman for,
My whole life,
your whole life?
practically, yeah.
So tell me how are you going to approach competing against someone so formidable?
Yeah, I think that, I have a lot of respect for the congressman. He has a long and distinguished career, as you've pointed out. And so I would never make disparaging comments. But what I will say is that I don't measure the totality of this position by numbers of years served or numbers of vote. I have to measure it by leadership. And the Illinois 7th Congressional District is the 5th most Democratic district in the country. We are D plus 38, which means that we vote blue, like deep blue. So we have the luxury of not having to slow walk these issues or be middle of the road about any of these issues. We could literally serve as a progressive model for the country, a national model on how we push forth the progressive agendas and build really strong coalitions. And unfortunately, I just haven't seen that in the last few years from the congressman. And I think that, once again, this goes back to the question of when do we get to the point where we're elevating new leadership in this country to match what is going on from this administration.
Yeah, I really do feel like there should be term limits. There just
That was
there
my
just should be
right out
term
of my
limits.
next question. Out of my, this is kind of a case for such a thing, because even though people are, he's a great congressperson, he's a good congressman. We know that he's a strong Democrat, but you get kind of set in your ways, whether you want to or not, when you've been doing the job for so long. And, you can
Absolutely.
force a fresh approach when you have a term limit. So.
Yeah. And, I've been going across the district speaking with people, and they've been electrified by this, right? That they will potentially have options. We haven't had a woman on the ballot. We haven't had women of color on the ballot, someone under 30. So it's not that you just meet these check boxes, but you're basically looking through a lens that is very critical and needed in this time when we're talking about informing legislation and implementation of legislation legislation. So it's not enough for Democrats, in my opinion, anymore to be voting the right way. That's your job. You're supposed to vote the right way.
But
We
what
need
more
you to
can you
lead.
do?
We need you to lead on this
absolutely.
and push back.
And I think, and having younger and a fresh, a different perspective is always valuable. With what's going on, you were talking about there hasn't been a woman on the ballot in a while, and I know earlier in your career you also helped something with the Illinois Council of Women and on
Oh my
Women
gosh,
and Girls.
you did your research.
I did. So what? So can you tell our listeners what that is? Because
Absolutely.
that is, I mean, go.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things that Donald Trump has done, and he has done this since the beginning of the time he stepped into office, is to roll back any Obama era policies. One of the first things that President Obama did in 2009 was create a commission or an executive order to create the White House Council on Women and Girls, which was started by Chicago's very own Valerie Jarrett, Tina Chin, and Mrs. Obama. And essentially, this was to help protect women on the federal level and to say that federal agencies, whether it's Department of Homeland Security, transportation, housing, that they need to look at their policies through a gender lens. And it really served as a buffer for us to be having these conversations about equity and policy. Well, he got rid of it. And when he got rid of it, I found out, I read in a Politico article, and I brought it back to the state level. And I co-authored House Bill 5544, the Illinois Council on Women and Girls Act, which essentially is a commission for to advise the governor and state lawmakers on any policies that impact women and girls in the state of Illinois. What was particularly interesting about this legislation, though, was that I wanted to make it a bill so that it was law. I didn't want an executive order because we know that governors can just toss it out. And so I stipulated that the council be racially proportionate to the state, that it includes and centers working class women, that it expands reproductive health care and access to education and access to reproductive health care, and that we include the transgender community.
Beautiful.
I got a ton of pushback, and people said, Bruce Rauner is never going to sign this into law. And I'm like, I'm not asking him. We're going to do this.
Right.
And people told me, both on the Democrat and Republican side, can you just take the transgender language out of the bill so that we can get it passed? And I was like, not without a fight, right? Because if you want to be transphobic, let your voting record reflect that.
Good for you.
But we don't have to water down our legislation. So here's the silver lining, and let me button it up.
Sure.
It passed in the House, it passed in the Senate, and then it went to Bruce Rauner's desk, and we got him to sign it into law.
All right.
So it is a living.
He was on social issues a little more liberal than than some Republicans. Kina, who are your political heroes? Who's inspired you to be this powerhouse that you are today?
You know, I think that I have been extremely inspired by the tangible leadership in my life. So the political heroes are the nameless, faceless, unsung heroes in our communities that we don't see on TV. You know, I was one of the original protesters for Laquan McDonald, and I remember how people said we would never get anything done. Well, you don't get a Lori Lightfoot without the protesters and activists for Laquan McDonald.
You got to start at the local level.
Heroes.
Yeah,
those are my heroes. They showed me integrity and the power of the collective community. So definitely, I would say the people who I know that are in my circle who are pushing every single day to protect civil rights and civil liberties and, you know, the goodness of what our democracy could really be.
You know, there was a young community organizer here in Chicago who went on
him.
to do a couple of good things. So, you know, hats off to you. So we don't have too much time left, but what are the issues that are really, really important to the 7th Congressional District? Yeah,
it's an extremely progressive district. So I would say it is criminal justice reform, gun violence reduction, and then, of course, you know, making sure that we put health care at the forefront. Illinois 7th Congressional District has the largest life expectancy gap in the country. So essentially what that means is in our district, Streeterville is in our district. And anybody who knows Streeterville, it is an affluent area, very wealthy. I think the median income is $110K or something like that. If you travel about 10 miles south to Inglewood, which is also in the district, is a working class community of color. I think the median income is somewhere in the 30,000 or 30K.
180-degree difference.
It is the life expectancy in Streeterville is 90, and the life expectancy in Inglewood is 60. So it drops by 30 years just based on your zip code. I am the first thing that I want to do when I get into Congress is to create a task force for Illinois 7th, once again to serve as a national model on how we begin to close that equity gap. Specifically around healthcare and gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform, since it is something that
It
we
needs
deal
to
with
happen.
heavily.
Well, yeah, and just even food deserts too.
Food
I mean,
deserts,
because like
lead in the water.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a ton of things that
And
we
it's
could
so
talk about.
crazy that it falls into that is in the exact same district that's happening.
It's the same district.
It's kind of like what
just based off your zip code, literally.
yeah. Well, it's just like sounds like exactly what Elijah Cummings is dealing with right now.
With the occupant in the White House.
Yeah. Goodness. Okay, so we're running out of time, and it makes me so sad about this. But so, just real quickly, why should people vote for you?
I think that we need the people who are, like I said, I'm the only candidate running in this Illinois 7th race right now that is an insurgent candidate that's living in a marginalized community. And I think that in order for us to have transformative change across this country is that we have to have those who are closest to the pain, closest to the power and the solutions, right? Informing policy, making it inclusive, and also understanding that progress happens at the intersection of activism and legislation. I have the activism background, I have the policy background, and I'm ready to take on and tackle, and I won't back down from difficult political fights.
I can tell you
All
won't.
right. Well, Kina Collins, good luck to you as you enter into this
Kina.
crazy season. If you want to find out more information, which I think you do, I know you do, to find out more about Kina Collins, go to kinaforcongress.com. That is kinaforcongress.com. Go check her out. I'm inspired, so I'm going to move to the 7th District just so I can vote for you. Kina Collins, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kina.
Break Legs,
Good luck.
Come back anytime, please.
Good energy. Thank you.
We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it is the second hour of Out Chicago right here on WCPT.